Hi, my name is TJ. My dad died of overdose on January 1st, 2011, and my mom is a recovering addict. God helped my mom, and now together we are here to help you. Now let's talk recovery. Here's your host, my mom, Susan Sexton-Wood.
Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk Recovery. I'm your host, Susan Sexton-Wood. Today we have a special guest with us, and we also have a co-host with us. Sandy Sexton-Jones is our co-host, and we have Ron Stevens here from the Coroner's office. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Death is definitely taking a toll on society today with the epidemic of heroin. Can you share with us kind of what your job has gone to with the epidemic?
When I took office, the coroner's office would process between 150 and 200 cases a year. And at one time, I think they reached 20 drug-related deaths in a year's time. I've been in office for 4 years and a half now, and we have doubled and doubled again. And last year, in 2016, we reached 57 drug-related deaths. Drug-related, not all heroin. At first, everyone was really afraid of heroin, but now we're seeing a resurgence of alcohol-related deaths, cocaine. The dealers are lacing even the marijuana that comes into the area with a deadly form of fentanyl in an effort to gather more customers, if you will. And we're seeing now deaths that are related to cocaine laced with fentanyl, heroin laced with fentanyl, the marijuana laced with fentanyl, any combination of those things. It's just become terrible in its scope, so much so that we are over 40 so far this year, and we're still in June. So you can see that rather than winning the war against drugs, unfortunately, we seem to be losing it. And what's sad to me is people hear these numbers and statistics, but I always liken it to your average classroom in a school is 25 to 30 kids. We're talking 40. Now lay all those kids down on a sidewalk and throw a blanket over them, and that's what we're experiencing right here in Wayne County. With that is the surrounding subculture that supports that drug community, and it involves crime, prostitution at times, theft, of course, in order to gain money to pay for the drugs. And people think, well, that's a victimless crime. They're only the people that are directly affected or the people that are taking the drugs. But no, it's not. Not too long ago, a woman was arrested taking a television from Walmart, her 30th one.
Wow.
Now, if you ever shop at Walmart, you are paying an elevated cost because that woman stole 30 televisions to support her drug habit. You don't think of things in that way, but that is what is happening in this area. Now, where we are geographically located makes us at high risk. We're right on I-70, which has been facetiously called Heroin Highway. There have been more heroin-related busts on that highway with the FACT, I think it's called. It's a co-relationship between state police, local police, sheriff's deputies and things. They set along 70, watch for suspicious activity, stop vehicles and search them, and they've made huge fines in those stops. But we're on I-70, we're on 40, we're on 35, we're on 38, 27. We're centrally located between Dayton, Cincinnati, Connorsville, Indianapolis, Kokomo, Marion, Muncie, Columbus, Ohio, all these areas that are heavy in drug use, and we're like at the epicenter. We get it all. So consequently, out of 92 counties in the state of Indiana, we are usually at or above third to, and sometimes first, in per capita drug abuse in the state of Indiana. Last week, Dayton, Ohio, which seems to be the primary source of product for this area, was deemed the single highest per capita in drug addiction in the United States of America, nearby Dayton, Ohio, Montgomery County. So we're at a huge risk.
So it's pretty serious.
It's very serious, and I don't have power per se in my office, but I'm using every tool at my command to provide information to investigators and people of that nature in order to give them the best amount of education and information that I can. I have full forensics pathology done on drug overdoses, and what we're seeing is a pattern, and lately we saw things start to find, it's a way for me to tell, okay, where are these things coming from? We located it in Dayton, Ohio, Trotwood area, Clayton area. It comes over here, but the way I'm doing that is I started to see a certain relationship, say between the amount of cocaine to the amount of fentanyl with which it was laced, and the fact that marijuana was in there, and then it was starting to be laced with fentanyl, so the fentanyl level went up, and we started seeing, even though people take different amounts, we started to see there was a ratio between these things, so we kind of are locating where that sources come from. They're beginning to make more and more busts on the sales and distribution of that drug. To me, it's sick, but it's one of the most successful pyramidal sales schemes in the world, because they have smart chemists making drugs, they have smart distributors, they have people that are selling it that are very smart at what they do, obviously, because they're selling to more and more people all the time. Now, there's another thing that we found, and this just disheartened me when I started to see this pattern. If we'd have a death related to, say, cocaine laced with fentanyl, we would find the little corner baggie or whatever they sell it in, or a little tablet, looks like a tea bag, and there would be a star on that tea bag. Well, we found out that they would put a deadly level of fentanyl in that drug, put the star on it, people would die, and in this drug subculture, now that is the kind they want, because that's the good stuff. And so they would seek that out, and the guy that put that in his first batch, he'd maybe cut it in 5 different ways, and then he put the star on one of them. People started seeking that star to buy it, and he'd start putting the star on all the ones that weren't as deadly. Another thing we've seen in Wayne County, which I saw it kind of creeping toward us, and it's now here, we've had deaths now related specifically to carfentanil, which was designed to tranquilize rogue elephants. And if you were to take a packet of artificial sweetener and dump that powder on the table and divide it into 1,000 tiny little bits of that powder, each one of them is deadly.
So there's not just one type of fentanyl, there's many different types.
I'll tell you what happened. When they started manufacturing fentanyl, especially for abuse, in other words, subculture, not made in a laboratory. Fentanyl is a good drug. Fentanyl is a wonderful drug. They give it here for, say, if you were to have a lot of pain, you're in the hospital, you receive a morphine shot. If they gave you a little bit of fentanyl with that morphine, it would enhance the effect, and be better to control that pain. That's all well and good. The fentanyls that we're seeing on the street aren't made like that. They're not made in pristine laboratories and sold by pharmaceuticals. They're made primarily in China. They're shipped from China to Afghanistan. Afghanistan is where 85% of the opium poppy fields are in the world, owned by the Taliban. So, and they also have means to ship that out. Comes across the seas to Canada and Mexico, filters in the United States, distributed through their substructure that they've set up. That all started in a small town in Ohio that had lost all their industry, and these smart drug guys went there and said, okay, we've got the solution to your, right here in River City. We've got a way for you to make plenty of money, and believe it or not, they bid on it, and that's where that started to spread from. Is the sales were started out of that small community in Ohio because it came up the river and across and into Ohio to an area that was low in their economy. What we're seeing here, we have a very similar thing in Connorsville, nearby Connorsville, Indiana, where they lost a lot of their industry, Ford plant and everything cut down. So there's a huge subculture of drug sales there. Back to what started me down that road, fentanyl made in China, because it was being sold illegally, it was outlawed by the legislature. So their smart chemists changed. I don't know how many of you went to chemistry class, but if you set up the little diagram of what a cell or a molecule of fentanyl looks like, they would change one little arm on it, like put one more carbon atom or something on it. Now that fentanyl is different, so it's legal, because that's the one that was outlawed. Well, okay, the legislature outlaws that one, so they go into their little laboratory and they change it again. At the last I heard, there were 62 analogs of fentanyl.
Oh, wow.
So, Ron, what would you say to people that say, I'm only smoking weed, I'm not hurting anyone?
How do they know they're not what they're smoking?
Exactly.
Unless they grow it themselves, they have no idea what's in that. And like I said, we're finding almost on a daily basis now marijuana that's been brought into this area for sale, and it's being sold to the same people that have used it and used it and used it. Now they smoke it. Feels a little different, but feels pretty good, so they want more of it. It's fentanyl. They actually soaked the marijuana in fentanyl and are selling that. So if they're only using marijuana, they are at risk, and I mean huge risk. We have had deaths. People will tell you, oh, that's a myth. We have had deaths attributed directly to the use of only marijuana. That's a drug that changes the manner in which you think. It changes the manner in which you behave. You're virtually under the influence. Now you get in your car and drive, and what's going to happen? So we do get that quite a bit. The other thing that we recently, and I'm going to use a case that I really don't know all of the ifs, ands, or buts about it yet, but there were recently a young man from this county went down to Franklin County, was put in jail. As soon as he got into his cell with two other young men, he pulled a bag of some drug out of his rectum. The three of them took it. All three of them immediately dropped to the floor of the cell. Two of those young men are dead. And the third was brought up here and put in the hospital. So unless you grew it yourself, how do you know how that marijuana got here? It probably came across the river from Mexico at someone's backside. And that may sound funny, but to me, that's what these people are putting in their mouths and in their veins. And just marijuana. Marijuana is a true gateway drug. People will argue with me and they will say, oh, you're crazy, you just don't like it. Well, no, I'm not. I put people's cases to rest every day that thought the same thing. And if you think that legalized marijuana, I'm all for marijuana for medical purposes, don't get me wrong. It's a wonderful drug used properly, but people don't use it properly. You go to all the states, Oregon and Washington, and where Colorado, where it's legalized, you ask the law enforcement officials there, are we having a good time now that it's legalized? No, they're not. They're having increased problems every day. And they will continue to do so. And my recommendation as coroner and as Ron Stevens and as a Christian man is, if you are asked to vote for the legalization of marijuana in your state for any reason other than strictly controlled medical reasons, vote no.
One thing that you said was how the star is put on the merchandise that's sold. Being a recovering addict, that is truly how we think.
Yes.
And to me, it just reminds me of how sick I was, that when you hear that, that is what you go to, and then you think, well, I'm just not going to do as much, and then maybe I'll be okay. And then I can see that leading to a lot of deaths. Sandy, you're a recovering addict too, and can you relate to that?
Definitely. Because in our mind, we want the good stuff. We want the stuff that's going to not make us think about the person that we're being. So if we get the good stuff, it'll save us. We'll convince ourselves it's going to save us some money because we don't have to do as much. We can do a little bit less and get the same effect. And then eventually, for me, it got to the point to where I didn't care to die anymore.
Right.
If I got the good stuff, it would take me out and I would be out of my misery because I was a bad person and I didn't deserve to be on the earth. I had no purpose. So that is how sick I was as well.
That's unfortunate. I don't believe, and I honestly do not believe, that any kid wakes up in the morning before they go to school, you know what, I want to be the best darn heroin addict I can be, and that to me would be a success. I don't think a kid ever said that, ever.
With that being said, I've always wondered what your perspective is on it, because you're the one out there doing the work. You're the one going, and seeing all these people dying. And I hear so many people saying, just let the addicts die. Let's do away with Narcan. Let them die. They want to live that life. How do you feel about that?
I've never heard anyone say that if it was their son or daughter.
Exactly.
It's always someone else's son or daughter, and my kid would never do that. Baloney. You cannot, if you took a picture of 100 different people in all walks of life, doctors, lawyers, homeless people, students, children, elderly, in factory workers, and ask me, okay, pick out of that picture which one are drug addicts, you can't do it. But I could give you an example of every one of those people that was a drug addict. Same. It's not a respecter of race, age, sex, socioeconomic position, anything. It's, if you, out of 20 people, the first time they ever try it, first time, one will die. 5 will become hopelessly addicted for the rest of their lives. And again, another thing that I'm often told, and to me it's a myth, that people actually do, and please don't get me wrong, because I'm so proud of both of you, 2% actually totally successfully are rehabilitated from it and recover from it and never go back to it. We have people all the time that go through the legal methadone clinics and Suboxone clinics, and they come out and they function well for 2 to 3 years, and then they go back to a party with one of the same people they used to party with before, and one time they slip, and guess who gets to see him next? It'd be me, because when they were taking it regularly, they'd build up a resistance, and like you said, it took more and more and more to reach the feeling you were trying to get. And please admit, you weren't trying to get high anymore. You were trying not to get sick after a certain point in time because you were starting to feel the withdrawal. Now you're trying to stave off that withdrawal symptom.
Right.
So when you go out and you get it one more time, then it can be deadly because you take the same amount you were used to taking. Your body doesn't need that much anymore, and boom, you're gone.
Right.
And a lot of the argument I hear is against the naloxone, Narcan. I have some bad feelings about that because I have a little granddaughter who's deadly allergic to milk and milk byproducts. And if she didn't have an EpiPen with her and took a bite of something that had a milk byproduct in it that she didn't know, she would instantly need to have that epinephrine shot, or she would perhaps die of an anaphylactic reaction, and those cost her $200 to $300 for 2 of them. I think it was 2 weeks ago, I worked a case. A young lady was given 8 doses of Narcan in the field. She got 8 more in the emergency room. She was back to the point where she was breathing, but she had to be placed on life support. Then she went to ICU for a week on life support, was brain dead, unplugged, and dead. Who do you think paid for all that?
Taxpayers.
The taxpayers. Because that Narcan didn't cost her a penny, and all that treatment in the hospital, who are you going to get to pay for? If you or I laid in ICU for a week, what would our bill be like?
Right.
So it's just terrible. What we were saying about the little star thing, I spoke to an unfortunate mother in Hagerstown one evening. Her daughter, straight A student, cheerleader, beautiful girl, just a pinup of the ideal high school young lady, got with a boyfriend, and they started to dabble a little bit, and they got worse and worse and worse. And then she kept telling her mom she was off of it. Her friends, a couple of them died. And she actually told her mom, that's the good stuff. That's what I've been trying to get. The people that died just don't know what they're doing. And in her words, I got this. Well, guess who got to see her within a month after that? So it's terrible. And when you were saying you'd make the decision, you wanted that, this drug is so insidious, it gets in your mind and it physically changes your thought processes. Physically changes them. You don't think correctly because you're incapable of thinking correctly, because that drug has so altered your neural pathways, you're making bad decisions on a routine basis.
With all the bad that continues to happen, with the epidemic, what do you see positive happening out in the community?
What I see is groups that come together. They are seeking more information. They are learning more about what situation we're in. They're learning about ways in which to make that better. And I think that is working. I'm not so sure that we've peaked yet on the level that we're going to see in the drug-related deaths here, but I do see some light at the end of the tunnel because so many people are working to fight it. The national government has launched initiatives and monies to fight this. The state has launched initiatives, task force to fight this. Our local law enforcement is working closely with the prosecutor and other agencies so that there are places you can go and receive this help. There are, thank God, and I mean that considerably, church-related groups that are fighting this, and nobody can override the power of prayer. And I'm a huge advocate of that, and I think that the more we can involve the Christian community and the prayer warriors, if you will, to help lend that power, which is more powerful than any of us, to this recovery and to defeat this blight on the society, the better. So I'm encouraged by people getting together, talking, and what I see as a solid, concrete effort to fight this thing and put it down. And I think it's going to work. Hope it happens in my lifetime.
If you could say something to someone that may be watching this show and they're really struggling with their inactive addiction and they want to get clean, but it's a fight. It's a fight because of the sickness that comes along with getting clean. What could you say to them?
I would say do seek help. The first thing that I learned was you can't help someone that doesn't want to be helped. Mm-hmm. They have to want to be helped. If those people, if I could talk to them, if you want to be helped, you go to speak to someone in your family, not to your drug friends that you're doing the drugs with. They're going to say, that's baloney. Seek someone that you know, that you look up to in the community, and they will help you. Because my experience has been more and more people are aware of the paths that you can take. And there are all sorts. And you can start at the hospital. Mm-hmm. Just go there and tell them, look, I got a problem. I don't know. You can go to the mental health facilities in the area like Centerstone, Meridian, and places like that. Seek help, and they will get it for you. And there, to me, though, the church-based community is the one that's going to help the most.
Yes, I believe that too. Well, we want to thank you for being on the show. And if you are someone that is struggling, we want to encourage you to reach out for help. This epidemic is taking so many lives, and we want to put a stop to it, and we know that that's going to be a hard thing to do. But we're at Unchained Praises. We're here fighting daily. We use our own testimonies, myself and Sandy. We just share with people the ugly truth of what we did in active addiction, so that it may help them, because we want people to get help. We don't want them to live the life and go down the same path that we did. Remember that the person that struggles with addiction is somebody's someone. Our next guest, the area that they're from, we're going to be talking about somebody's someone, and it's a whole event just around that. And when Ron talked about there is that somebody's someone. So we want to thank you for joining us here at Let's Talk Recovery, and join us again for our next episode. Thank you. I just lost it.